Okay, we're doing this. It's happening. Everyone that's probably watching this right now already knows who I am, but whatever. I'm Sophia. This video is gonna be my top 20 favorite albums of 2019. I did an Instagram poll and asked if anyone would actually want to see this, and a lot of people said yes, probably just because you want to see me look freaking stupid on camera, but you know, whatever, we're here. I don't know how this is gonna turn out. It's probably gonna be really bad. I wrote a very long set of notes for this video, so if you see me looking down, it's because I'm like referring to that. But I might say some stupid stuff that doesn't make sense, honestly, but doing my best, I guess. Everything seems like it makes sense when I have it written down, but then I don't know, when I say it out loud it might sound stupid. I don't know, I just wanted to make this anyway because I liked a lot of albums in 2019 and I wanted to talk about them, and I know that a lot of people don't really like to read, so I didn't want to just make another blog post about it. I was like, let me switch it up, let me make a video, and hopefully it's a little more interesting to watch. But I guess we'll see how that turns out. This video is gonna have my 10 honorable mentions in no order, and then my top 20 albums of last year that yeah, are in order, obviously. So yeah, keep watching if you're interested in those, or you think we might share any similar albums, which we probably will because my picks are not that unique or different, but you know, whatever, it's what I enjoyed the most this year and what I listened to the most. So yeah, that's that. Let's jump into it. Sorry if the angle keeps shifting slightly in this. I'm like continuously picking up my phone to watch over stuff, so yeah, it's gonna shift a little bit. But anyway, so my top 10 honorable mentions from this year are gonna be You Can't Sit With Us by Pivot Gang, Nothing Great About Britain from Slowthai. That album grew on me quite a bit throughout the year. Leak 04-13 Bait Ones from J. Paul, Lost Boy from YBN Cordae, Revenge of the Dreamers 3 from Dreamville, 1000 gecs by 100 gecs. Didn't like this album that much at first, but then it definitely grew on me as well as the year went on, once I accepted it more as a meme. Is He Real by IDK, which honestly is a little bit corny at times, but I cannot deny that I've listened to this album a lot this year. So, Gray Area by Little Simz, La Linda by Tei Shi, love her forever. Didn't like this album as much as Crawl Space from 2 years ago, but still enjoyed it a lot. And, the first Glass Beach album by Glass Beach. I wish I got to this earlier in the year, and I might have put it higher up on my list, but I think I just listened to it too late and didn't think I had enough time to really process it before making this list. But yeah, I like this album a lot too. It's really fun and emo, but yeah, there's that. Those are my honorable mentions. Okay, so first up at number 20, I have When I Get Home by Solange. I enjoyed this album a bit more than A Seat at the Table, just because it sounds a bit more mature and it has more direction to it. But just like that album, I really appreciate a lot of the messages on it, how she just talks about Black woman empowerment and embracing your beauty and feeling comfortable in your own skin on songs like Almeida and My Skin, My Logo. She also pays homage to her Houston roots. I think that's cool that she kind of likes to never forget where she came from and all that good stuff. In sound, it is very smooth and just groovy and mellow. It's just very soothing, sensual sound. Solange's vocals are great too. She is very soulful and passionate, even though she doesn't exert herself too much, but you could still hear that strength in her voice. There's a lot of interludes and speaking parts, which I was kind of like, oh, whatever in the beginning, but actually I do kind of appreciate them more now. I think they're pretty interesting, and I feel like break up the album in a nice, natural way and make the track list feel less intimidating. It's still a little bit long in my opinion, but there are definitely a handful of songs that I will go back to continuously, like Say Flow, Almeida, Bins. I think that Solange is just a very important, powerful figure in R&B and like even as a political figure as well, so that's great. So next up I want to talk about Malibu Ken from A$AP Rock and Tobacco. I feel like this album kind of went under the radar for some people. Maybe I just didn't really see it talked about as much like a month or two after it came out, and even I kind of like started forgetting about it towards the end of the year, but then I remembered it. Malibu Ken is basically just an amazing collision of two genius minds. A$AP Rock is obviously an incredible rapper. He's got like the most creative and expansive vocabulary. He's an amazing storyteller. He uses very graphic and intricate details in all of his lyrics, and it's just like pretty insane to listen to. And then Tobacco, the producer, is also pretty insane. He has this very abrasive electronic sound that makes you feel like you're tripping out and like your face is melting, and both of them together are just like a recipe for success. You would think that it would just be kind of like sensory overload and like, you know, overstimulating, but in fact they complement each other really well. One never overpowers the other or anything. It's really just like, you know, a good combination. There's just a lot of random crazy narratives given to us from A$AP on like Tuesday, Acid King, Churro. He's basically just spitting bars on like a bunch of his personal life and experiences, but also just a lot of like stuff in the news and like how crazy and fucked up the world is. It's a very creative and eclectic approach for an album, I think, and it worked out really nicely. And I, you know, hope that these guys collab in the future again. Next is gonna be Why Hasn't Everything Already Disappeared by Deer Hunter. Deer Hunter was a band that I just discovered, like not discovered, but like, you know, started listening to this year for the first time, and I just immediately fell in love with them. They have this very classic, timeless indie rock, indie-tronic sound that I think is so enchanting and elegant and always tugs at my heartstrings. It makes me like weepy and like sentimental. Why Hasn't Everything Already Disappeared? It makes me feel like I've gone back in time. Like I'm just staring out into an open field, like feeling very nostalgic and longing for the past or something. The lyrics themselves are very poetic and narrative driven. It has a lot of beautiful and upbeat songs that, you know, they might sound upbeat at first, but they kind of, you can tell that there are some darker underlying messages, whether it be like political or makes historical references, talking about like the environment, the human condition, how life is fleeting and fragile. It's all very thought-provoking stuff. And the lyrics always just really resonate with me. You know, Bradford Cox's ability to articulate and string together words in the most like satisfying way and paints such like vivid, visceral imagery and feelings, particularly on songs like No One's Sleeping, Element, and What Happens to People. I just think that Deer Hunter has this very pristine sound that a lot of other indie bands that I listened to or that got me into music like years ago just kind of tried to exemplify. And you know, Deer Hunter is kind of like that pinnacle band. So I'm really glad I started listening to them this year. This was my first time listening to FKA Twigs, like ever this year. She's definitely a sight to behold in that she is so just fearless and artistic and angelic and goddess-like. LP1 was really cool. I liked that a lot. Her sound is very atmospheric. It's like celestial art pop. I feel like it's just like a spiritual experience whenever you listen to her. And on that album, she sung a lot about like romance and heartache and just dealing with extremely painful emotions, and that carries over to Magdalene, but in an even more powerful and hard-hitting way. I like the flow of the album, how it goes from like very kind of soft and hushed songs in the beginning to like more heavy electronic and like trap stuff in the middle, and then gets quieter again at the end. Again, like she talks a lot about just like grief and heartbreak and searching for love, and then also she just talks about straight up depression. Daybed, like that song is fucking sad. When you feel like you're clinging to your bed or your couch or whatever, and you're just watching life pass around you and just not being able to do anything about it. And then Holy Terrain, which is like a banger, is just kind of like asking if a man will be able to stand up to your standards and if they're like worthy of you. Cellophane is really an extremely impactful song. You feel like every word she's saying is like the very last bit of energy and will that she has in her, and she's just like pouring it out. It kind of just feels like you're going through the motions of her, from like the very, you know, soft and whispery kind of tame and restrained, I guess, tracks to just like the more like bombastic, sporadic like expressions of emotion. Very powerful album, a lot of soul crushing ballads, a lot of very experimental and intriguing sounds that keep you on your toes. And yeah, bless up FKA Twigs. There's no denying that there was going to be a lot to live up to for this album, because I fucking loved Charlie's previous projects like Number One Angel, Pop 2, and even the Vroom Vroom EP. Charlie just really always pushes the boundaries for like dancey pop music, kind of making them more futuristic and daring and kind of just always taking it that next level up. And then Charlie, this album is another fantastic project. It's got a lot of really fun and invigorating tracks like Next Level Charlie and Gone and 1999 and Shake It, but then it also has a great deal of quite personal and intimate tracks as well, like Cross You Out, White Mercedes, I Don't Want to Know, Thoughts. On a song like Thoughts, she kind of talks about like partying and doing all this stuff, but also how she kind of uses it as a distraction from having to think about like all this other painful stuff. On White Mercedes, where she talks about feeling like undeserving of someone's love. So it's really interesting because she, you know, creates a lot of these very sad introspective ballads, but sets them to like hard-hitting electronic production. As far as the features go, I didn't really care too much for like the Lizzo remix. I thought track 10 was better as it was. The fucking Christine and the Queens feature on Gone is incredible. I like the Sky Ferreira song, her features with Troye Sivan and Haim. You know, overall I think that this project has a lot more like kind of personal and introspective anthems on them, you know, that are a bit just slower and deeper than her other projects, which I do really appreciate and I think came out really well and say a lot. I guess I just don't prefer to go back to them as much as I would just like more exciting songs on like her mixtapes. It's definitely more powerful, and I feel like Charlie showed us this more like vulnerable side of her on this album. Danny Brown is still killing it in the game, even at his ripe old age. His last album, Atrocity Exhibition, was definitely a mind-boggling experience. It totally sent you in a whole downward spiral. Danny Brown is a phenomenal rapper, but on that album, he talked a lot about just like substance abuse and, you know, using drugs and alcohol as a means of coping. It's very like a kind of a deep dive into his mental state. Sometimes it's hard for me to return to that album, but on You Know What I'm Saying, It's definitely a turn for the more straightforward and lighthearted, I feel like. It is much more undeniably catchy. It still sounds so distinct though, due to Danny's just like incredibly infectious voice and personality. Literally nobody else sounds like him. The album goes in a few different directions. It's still pretty bleak at times, like even in the first song, Change Up, where he kind of talks about having to knuckle down and like push through and, you know, not look back on the direction that he's headed. There's a lot more like laid back and like kind of humorous, sarcastic songs like Dirty Laundry. And then there are some of the coolest, quirkiest and most addictive beats in production on like Belly of the Beast and Savage Nomad. And Best Life and You Know What I'm Saying are like just very feel-good tracks that kind of just talk about just like staying optimistic. They're very fun and lively. So yeah, the album I think is a bit more, you know, kind of just like tame and surface level in a wonderful way, because, you know, it's kind of like Danny pulling himself out of this very dark and twisted time and just is like enjoying life again. Production is overall super great, you know, from Q-Tip to Fly Low. I loved the Run the Jewels feature, the JPEG feature, and Blood Orange. Even being a less intense and severe experience, it's still Danny showcasing his amazing skills as a rapper. This was a very, very good album. The dynamic duo returned with an amazing follow-up to their last collab album, Pinata, from 2014. There was a lot of hype and anticipation for this album, and it delivered. Madlib and Freddie Gibbs are like a match made in heaven. Madlib showcases his endless armory of creative, artistic sounds and beats and samples, and my favorite like showcasings of this talent and ability are come up on songs like Crime Pays, Palmolive, Massage Seats, Fake Names. I love the little flute switch up thing in the middle. And then Freddie Gibbs' performance is always just like top notch. He is super aggressive and belligerent in his delivery. He honestly just like can go like rapid fire and flow and never miss a beat or run out of steam. He talks about a lot of different stuff too, whether it be like bragging about his wealth and success, the kind of usual stuff like sex and relationships, and then also just violence and drug dealing and like the life that he's grown up with and lived with and witnessed on the streets. And then I really love the features from Killer Mike and Pusha T and Anderson .Paak. Actually, the Killer Mike feature could have been a little better just because he kind of only sings the chorus on Palmolive, but he still sounds good. Just the combination of Madlib and Freddie Gibbs's talents and skills that they bring to the table is just so, it's just all there. Like, it's full force, like they don't hold back. It's a great follow-up to Pinata, but it is slightly different in sound, and I just am excited for Montana. If you know, you know. Clipping is really that band. I discovered them back in like 2017 when I listened to the album Clipping, and I just instantly knew that they were gonna be one of my favorite bands. Their sound is like experimental hip-hop, but it's very industrial and raw and deconstructed sounding. It's quite electronic and noisy. Daveed Diggs is just an insane rapper. You know, he can just go rapid fire and breathless, and it pairs so well on top of Jonathan Snipes and William Hudson's production. Addiction to Blood, or There Existed an Addiction to Blood, is a very masterful body of work. A lot of other, you know, reviews have said this, but it's basically like a horror movie in album form, in that every song kind of has a narrative tied to it. You know, they all paint very vivid and specific scenes and atmospheres with very specific feelings, whether they be like fear and paranoia, feeling like you're trapped and need to escape, or like you're running from something or somebody. In like every song, like David will just use very atmospheric, sensory, visceral, intricate details that really plant you in the space. A lot of songs have like a consistent beat to them and you kind of feel like you can nod your head to, but then they'll just like end up being super off kilter and like taking all these twists and turns. I feel like that's a lot of the reason why I enjoy clipping for their unconventional bangers. And you'll just be like, why am I headbanging to this description of someone getting murdered? I don't know. I just feel like the artistic vision of this album really came through, was super well executed. Not all songs have the most replayability, I guess, but like they're just very well done. I've seen Caroline Polachek's name on Charlie XCX's like on Pop 2. I fucking love the song Tears, and I don't know, that's all I really knew about her, so I didn't really know what to expect going into this. But Pang is a super sharp, smart, and calculated record that truly packs a punch. It's so clean and well produced, but not in like a generic, boring way. It's like art pop and synth pop. It's extremely catchy and infectious, but also got a lot of unconventional quirks. One being Caroline's incredible voice. It's kind of like strange and unexpected because it's like she's got this like soulful voice of an old folk singer or something, but then it's layered on top of these very heavy electronic elements. And she has a lot of very unique vocal inflections that kind of catch you off guard at first, but are nonetheless like a very obvious showcasing of her talent. And you know, she sings about a lot of very heart-wrenching things, desperate yearning for a specific person or to be of meaning to a specific person, on like Ocean of Tears and then Doors, which is one of my favorite songs. I can see how the chorus could be annoying for some people, but I love it and could not stop replaying it. And so yeah, there's a lot of very emotional and relatable things on this album, and I think she has the most incredible voice and the catchiest melodies and choruses and like very, you know, euphoric instrumentals that back it up. I just couldn't stop replaying it. This, you know, like kind of like the last quarter of the year. By now you might know that Denzel is literally one of my favorite rappers of all time. Imperial, which was like the first album that I ever listened to by him, is literally fucking amazing. It has just all these aggressive, grimy bangers on them, and there's not like a skippable track on it in my opinion. Taboo was also fucking amazing. It was very conceptual, divided into, you know, 3 different parts that kind of showcased different aspects of Denzel's personality. And I feel like Zoo just kind of went back into a very bright, high energy, colorful, you know, light and format. Wish was like my most played song by far of the whole year. Ricky is a lot of fun too and has a, you know, good message to it. Birds literally goes fucking hard as hell. I just feel like it's pretty much enjoyable all the way through. The interludes are kind of like weirdly collected at the end, but it's kind of made up for with the last song, PAT, going like so incredibly ham. I just have listened to this album so many times this year, and it just like solidified my love for Denzel and the fact that he is just an insanely talented, prolific, versatile, and just consistently great artist in whatever kind of project he puts out, whether it be conceptual or just a bunch of, you know, like party summer songs. So this was my first time actually listening to Billy Woods or Kenny Segal, and you know what, Billy Woods took, you know, a little bit for me to warm up to, mostly because his tone of voice is very, you know, aggressive spoken word, not necessarily the most melodic. It's just very kind of straightforward, smack in the face, very real. You can definitely hear like the pain and passion in his voice. And then Kenny Segal has this super chilling and haunting production. When I think of my favorite song on the album, A Day and a Week and a Year, it's kind of like lo-fi chill beats, but like also much more darker and grittier and heavier. And Billy Woods gets very deep on this thing. He just talks about growing up in poverty in Brooklyn, talks about just having to live in fear and in these very limited circumstances. I do feel like I need to listen to more of his stuff to kind of get a better understanding of his lifestyle and character, but I do feel like I get a good taste of it here. The things he says are very, you know, depressing and definitely get under your skin, but you know, it's like they need to be said. To be honest, the album to me kind of just sounds like the cover, which is literally one of my favorite covers I've ever seen. Just like the house and its like crumbling infrastructure, I feel like can maybe speak to Billy Woods's upbringing and mental state, how he kind of just like has endured so much but is still like standing and holding up. That's how I feel about this album. I want to listen to more of his stuff and Kenny Segal's stuff, but overall it was a very hard-hitting and moving album. I don't know if a year-end list could be complete without Brockhampton. As kind of cringy as that sounds, I don't even care. The Saturation trilogy in 2017 obviously was like a huge game-changing set of releases. I also loved Iridescence, even though I might be in the minority there. And then Ginger is just another great project. I feel like these guys can't put out a bad album in my eyes. On Ginger there's some like signature Brockhampton songs, like most of the singles, like I've Been Born Again, Boy Bye, If You Pray Right, they all kind of just sound like very trademark Brockhampton, you know, like pop rap, hard beats, kind of like wonky experimental production. And they always have super raw, introspective lyrics like love and growing up, dealing with fame, different experiences with people, just loss and regret. All of that still comes through on Ginger, of course, but it takes a more somber and melancholy light on like No Halo, for example. The minimal guitar progression, the like distant hums and forlorn lyrics, and then Sugar, which is just like the breakup song to end all breakup songs. I feel like the guys channel a more conventional, like sweet boy band sound, like NSYNC or Backstreet Boys, especially on like the song Ginger. I feel like with every album, they just go deeper and deeper into their personal stories and things that have shaped them, constantly uncovering different parts of themselves that they might have not really revealed or delved into before. They always just paint themselves as very genuine, human figures that I feel like is why a lot of people can connect to them and look up to them. And that's kind of, you know, also a big reason why I will always love them for as long as they continue to release music as well. My love for Rich Brian runs deep. I was literally there for him back in like 2016 when Dat Stick and 17 and Who Dat Be were just like popular songs on YouTube, and I even like downloaded them to my iPod. I followed him all the way up to Amen, which I thought was a pretty solid album. It was kind of one-dimensional in that it just had like, you know, his kind of standard monotonous voice all the way through, and the beats were pretty like just agreeable and like generic in a way, but I still enjoyed it a lot and continuously go back to a lot of songs on that. But The Sailor, in my eyes, took a big leap. I think that it is much more ambitious and dramatic. It incorporates a lot more different instruments and beat switch ups. The content though still builds off a lot of the same things as it did in Amen, just about like sex and being a teenager. But then he also talks more about kind of just coming from Indonesia and going against like maybe conventional norms of what someone from his country would choose to do as like a career path. So yeah, I appreciate that message a lot. And again though, production wise, I just think it has a lot more going on. It's more dynamic, and it, you know, a lot of songs use like orchestral strings like on Yellow and Drive Safe. I feel like it's a cool fusion of like pop rap with like classical stuff that kind of like comes out to a very contemporary sound. And then freaking Brian is also singing, which is crazy. And I think he has a really great singing voice that I was really impressed with. I think it's just a step in the right direction, for sure. I know that he's just gonna keep getting bigger, and I think I like him so much because he's like my age, and I don't know, I just want to be able to like follow him on this journey. And yeah, I just want to watch him, you know, keep rising up. Anyone who knows me probably knows that Vampire Weekend is one of my favorite bands of all time. I feel like thus far they've had like a spotless discography. Like their self-titled and Contra were amazing, kind of just smart and quirky and lovable. And then Modern Vampires of the City is one of my favorite albums ever. It's, you know, much more grand and profound and like existential. And I feel like all the albums just are like an incredible showcasing of the band's talent, like Rostam's production and Ezra's like, you know, intellectual, witty, and endearing mind and character. And you know, the band kind of has this exterior of being very like posh and preppy, you know, with their sweater vests and cardigans, but it comes off as quite like, you know, ironic and satirical, and they're like aware of the absurdity in it and kind of just embrace it. I think Father of the Bride returned to a more jovial and light-spirited sound. I wasn't crazy about it in the beginning just because I feel like it had a lot of songs. It kind of came off as less like organized and cohesive, but you know, it definitely did grow on me the more that I listened to it. It's still a lot of fun. It's very sweet and sentimental kind of sounding, very playful, pleasant. It sounds like spring when you're just like, I don't know, sitting in like a lush meadow and it's like very peaceful and warm. I don't know, Sunflower and Flower Moon are like so fucking catchy. They really exemplify that lovable and charismatic Vampire Weekend sound. Ezra is as kind of eloquent and articulate as ever, I feel like. The track list maybe could have been cut down a little bit at the end of the day, but I still don't think it was a bad return at all. They're just a very sentimental band to me that'll always have a special place in my heart. I like this album a lot. I like it very dearly, and I hope that they don't take 6 years to come out with another one. I don't know if I'm the most qualified person to talk about Tyler, the Creator, in terms of his whole discography, because I haven't listened to all of it. And I did kind of jump on the bandwagon after Flower Boy. Sorry, being transparent. But, you know, like everybody else, I fucking loved Flower Boy to death. I feel like it definitely put Tyler kind of on the mark, you know, in the mainstream, very mainstream scene. It kind of felt like he had foregone his older sound that was just very like reckless and purposely provocative, and he switched that persona for one much more sweet and introspective. And I feel like Igor continued in that same vein. It's very emotional, vulnerable. He's got a lot of very sad boy and sentimental songs, but also more like angry and aggressive ones. You know, as memey as it is, Earthquake is pretty sad, as well as Puppet and A Boy is a Gun. And then like New Magic Wand and What's Good are just like super like frustrated and like just pent up like emotions just like kind of flying at you. I feel like Igor was maybe not necessarily as like immediately catchy as Flower Boy. The beats are more like tame and subdued. The mixing is quite experimental in that I don't know, the album just sounds more like fuzzy and rugged compared to like the bright and crisp like sound of Flower Boy. The lyrics are just very, you know, blunt and confessional. Tyler does not hold back in saying a lot of these very maybe just embarrassing or like desperate sounding things that like a lot of people think but would be too scared to say. I think it definitely makes a statement in, you know, his discography and in just the generation, our generation as a whole. And Tyler's just at this point is super establishing himself as like his own brand, like comedian, fashion icon, songwriter and producer. He's just fantastic and deserves all the recognition that he gets. So presumably, like many others, I don't know, I think this was my first time listening to Wise Blood, and you know, this album I feel like really kind of broke her through, and I've seen it on like every single person's year-end list, well deservedly. This album is just purely immersive and enrapturing. Natalie Merring's voice is so just effortlessly rich and has so much range, and it paints a very vivid and surreal picture. The instrumentals go from like, you know, these grandiose strings to like pianos. It's all very like epic and cinematic. The whole album just feels like you're floating in this vast sea of emotions and you're just like confused but also like realizing things, and like it's just like an emotional roller coaster. Some songs are very hopeful, like A Lot's Gonna Change, and then some songs are very evocative and forlorn, like Something to Believe and Movies. She just talks about trying to find the meaning in everything and hoping that everything's not for nothing. In Movies, she just talks about her life wanting to be like a movie and how she loves movies. She kind of really full on addresses like just the mundaneness and loneliness of life. The album asks a lot of questions, but it doesn't necessarily provide the answers. It's just kind of like you're following her through you know, this whole journey of her just trying to figure it out. It's just a lot of emotions and topics, I guess, that I personally think about every day as well, and I think that's why this album resonates with me so much. And just it's just sound is so beautiful too that you just get completely lost in her world. This is gonna be a hard one to top, you know, with whatever she comes out with next, but I'm glad that in the meantime I can listen to some of her older stuff that I had not gotten to quite yet. I was so hyped for this album. Veteran was literally my favorite album of 2018. Sometimes it got a little bit too weird and abrasive for me, but overall I really fell in love with JPEG's sound. I loved his experimentalness and vocal inflections and his just overall not give a fuck personality. Honestly, Peggy's just like his own character. He writes and produces everything himself. He's experimental but also fuses it with elements of like trap and electronic stuff and just creates this super glitchy, distorted world. Cornballs is definitely, I think, less abrasive and in your face than Veteran. More songs sound a lot more like ethereal and spacey and kind of in that way like more directionless, but even so it's still a very entrancing listen. Other songs do like manage to capture that like ruthless belligerent energy as well. He acknowledges how Veteran blew him up and kind of like put him in the limelight. He talks about like Twitter trolls on like beta male strategies, and then on Free the Frail he's like talking about how he's gonna be who he wants no matter how the media or like fans perceive him. I really love the songs Rap Girl Old and Die, Basic Bitch Tear Gas, which is just like a cover of Scrubs. But I don't know, I just love his singing voice a lot. And I just feel like Peggy really is truly making a name for himself. He's kind of, again, just like an anarchist to all like popular culture shit and just calls out all the bullshit that he sees. I will say that sometimes it comes off as a little bit hot-headed and slightly alienating just because you're kind of like, damn bro, is there anything that you do like? But it's still fair, you know, he can talk about whatever he wants. I just want to see him thrive. I want to see him keep doing what he's doing. But yeah, this was a good follow-up to Veteran. I like it maybe almost just as much, but for different reasons. I have pretty much loved all of Injury Reserve's past projects. Fucking Live at the Dentist Office and Floss are some of my favorite albums ever. I think I just have this soft spot for like experimental alternative hip-hop that just like fuses weird shit with like mainstream stuff. Injury Reserve is like not too like abrasively experimental, you know, they have some like more like hard-hitting cuts, but you know, a lot of their stuff is just like jazz rap, like that's like very smooth and chill and just infatuating, and all of that same stuff just like shines through in even newer and more inventive ways on the new release. Like the opening track, Karuna and Lime, has like, you know, very skeletal production but still super hard hitting, and then Jailbreak the Tesla is like this crazy track that's like super kind of industrial, mechanical. Rap Song Tutorial is like one of my favorite songs. I know a lot of people didn't like it as much because it's just like a Siri voice breaking down how to make a rap song with the actual song like intertwined. It kind of comes off as like not as replayable, but for me it was. I fucking love like all the features on this too, like Rico Nasty on Jawbreaker, Amine on Jailbreak the Tesla is great. Freddie Gibbs like kills it on Wax On. Oh yeah, and then Dram on New Hawaii. His verse literally always puts me in my bag. It's so sad. They talk about a lot of different things, from like materialism to technology, love and fame, and self-doubt, not feeling like you're worthy of being praised and idolized, like on, I think it's Best Spot in the House, where Richie talks about that. It's super real shit. They get very personal and intimate, and I feel like it's just a testament to how dedicated and authentic that these guys are. I'm just so excited for them and what they're doing. I know that they're, you know, signed to a record label now, which is awesome, and I just think it's just like, you know, just the beginning for them. I have always loved Flume since his debut back in like 2012. That was like a game-changing album for me. I listened to it like after I started getting into indie music, and it was like the first like electronic, like beat heavy kind of album that I had ever really seriously listened to. That was like my gateway into like more actual like experimental electronic stuff and just that whole realm in general. So that was a great record. And then Skin was definitely, you know, a lot more sanitized and like commercialized. Nonetheless, I still love that album a lot for what it was. Like some of my favorite songs from by Flume exist on that album, and then this mixtape was just went in a completely different direction. It's way more experimental and adventurous. It feels like it just took a turn for the more industrial, wonkier, glitchier, rough around the edge sound. A lot of songs just kind of sound like he's just fucking like doing whatever he wants and just throwing sounds like on top of each other and being like, oh, this works. Things are just kind of like bursting to life on the spot. Love all of the other artists that appear on this too. Like the Sophie remix is great. JPEG on How to Build a Relationship is like so good. Slowthai on High Beams is so great. Slowthai is just like, he did a lot this year. He really makes all the features fit so well onto the album. Like all of their very crazy and audacious personalities just like fit perfectly on like a mixtape like this. The sounds are just much less, I feel like, predictable and like formulaic. Like the songs are just kind of not given straight to you. They're just like fluid and dynamic. And I'm just glad that he branched out and went in this direction. It's a really cool thing to see. I hope that he kind of like sticks with this and continues to channel this sound, because I loved it, and I think I don't know, he's like at his best on this record. I'm a hoe for Flume. I will always be a hoe for Flume. That's that on that. Okay, we made it. We made it this far. Thank you if you've stuck around to this point. So my #1 album of 2019 has to be Assume Form by James Blake. Not even to be corny, just because it was like my first album that I listened to in 2019, because it was, but I actually really do love it so much. And James Blake, just as person and artist, I feel like he's just continuously proved himself as a master of fusing like somber piano-based ballads with like very heavy electronic and trap elements. James Blake's lyrics are always beautiful. They're always very just vulnerable and emotional and pensive, and they always just hit home with me. So Assume Form, I feel like, is quite a bit more straightforward than The Color in Anything, at least, which was kind of a very disjointed album. Assume Form, I feel like, is more kind of cohesive and to the point. It sounds very polished and like refined and focused. There's just so many good songs and features, like Travis. Never thought I would hear Ass Fatter Than a Peach on a James Blake album, but here we are. James Blake and Rosalia's vocals blend together beautifully on Barefoot in the Park, and then Andre 3000 doesn't hold back at all on his verse. Moses Sumney's raspy, chilling vocals on Tell Them makes it one of my favorite songs on the record as well. To me, James's lyrics are as hard-hitting as ever. He says very blunt shit in very poetic ways on Are You in Love and I'll Come Too, where he's kind of just like, I would drop everything to follow this person anywhere. On Can't Believe the Way We Flow, he's like awestruck by the chemistry he has with someone. It's very pure and wholesome, but also like extreme in their infatuation, maybe to like an unhealthy extent even. There's like a perfect flow throughout all the songs on the track list. Into the Red and Can't Believe the Way We Flow are very like intense and overwhelming, and then like I'll Come To and Power On are kind of more just subdued and calm. And Don't Miss It makes me cry every time. It's just kind of James letting out what feels like these very built up emotions about like isolation and introvertedness, but he does it in a very elegant and composed way. I just feel like this album showcases everything he does so well. And I mentioned this in my blog post review of it, but it came at a very, very uncanny time in my life when I was going through some shit, and kind of helped pull me out of that dark place in a lot of ways. It just really meant a lot to me and made me feel less alone in my feelings. So that's what this album meant to me. I loved it so much. It is my album of 2019. But yeah, that's it. That's all my albums of the year. That was a lot. That was a lot. And if you made it this far, all the way to the end, I applaud you. Or, you know, maybe if you just skipped around and tried to find if there was any albums you knew about or liked as well, that's cool too. But you know, I'm glad that I did this. I'm glad I was able to just kind of get out all my thoughts about things that really stuck with me throughout this year and took up a lot of my time as far as listening and occupying my mind with things. So yeah, thank you so much if you watch this, or you know, even any part of it. I appreciate that, and I don't know if I'm gonna do anything like this ever again. Honestly, like I don't know, I don't really have any intention of like creating a full-on YouTube channel and where I post on frequently. I kind of just wanted to do this and see where it goes from here, I guess. Maybe I'll do one every year, but yeah, this was kind of just like a test run, I guess, you know, something kind of easy to do. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from here. Literally, if we have any of the same albums, favorite albums from this year, please let me know. Like, I don't know, comment if you have a channel, or just DM me on Insta and be like, yo, like, I like that too. So thank you for watching. See you on the flip side. I don't know. All right, bye.